So, some people think that intellect is a diagnostic of another person's value and worth as a human being. And that's dumb. So, what they're doing is they're mistaking something that's essentially a tool and thinking that that is intrinsically itself the thing that has worth. But really, intellect is just a tool, and what matters is how we use it. And it's one of many tools that we have as human beings. And so, when you are a person that considers themselves to be smart or highly logical or whatever the thing is, you are essentially similar to, let's say, a very strong person who's got muscles and works out and can pretty much end somebody if they wanted to. If that person were to decide to make smaller, weaker people do what they want, hand over whatever they want, that person, by the way, who's a bully, is exercising a might makes right mentality. And so, someone who thinks that because they are smart and are therefore better than other people, they're exercising a might makes right mentality. They've just switched out physical might for intellectual might. And what's very funny about that is that everybody's, all these people with this specific perception, they're thinking of their intellect at, let's say, the peak intellect that they have. So maybe something between like 25 to 35. They're thinking that they're like the smartest. And we have different levels of intellect over our lifetimes, just like we have different levels of physical capacity over our lifetime. So when we are a baby, obviously, we are not at our peak intellect and level of education and information and experience. But when we are older, we might have dementia, we might have Alzheimer's, or truthfully, we're all one car wreck away from brain damage or a traumatic brain injury like a TBI. So, to have a view of the world where you are intrinsically not respecting other people because you have a rubric that you've come up with and you've decided is what makes you better than other people. And then you're a human being who, in order to be happy and fulfilled, needs to be in a relationship with other human beings. You are setting the stage for becoming an abusive person. So if you get into a relationship dynamic or you get into a friendship with a person that you don't think is that smart, you don't respect them. So you're in this relationship dynamic, you're in this friendship, and you don't respect them, and that leads to contempt. And that contempt leads you to mistreatment. That can lead to belittling comments, that can lead to demeaning another person, that can lead to being controlling over them because you quote unquote know better. It's not respectful of the fact that human beings have a wide variety of skills and capacities, and a truly smart person would really want to like optimize everybody's individual capabilities. That's why we're in, the human community, because everybody has a different thing that they're good at, a different constellation of skills and abilities that can be used for the group, for the greater good. So as somebody who's trained a lot of people, I might have somebody who is a little bit lesser on the intellectual capacity, but I might be able to give that person a checklist, and I know they're going to go down that checklist and make sure they do every single little thing, and it is going to be done, and I can rely on them. Instead of maybe somebody who's like, so smart and takes shortcuts, right? Like, it's a tool. It is not a determination. It is not what determines our value as human beings. And, I know a lot of quote unquote very smart people who basically have been yearning for other people to quote unquote recognize how smart they are, but they've literally done nothing with that intellect. They are in their parents' basement or whatever. I'm thinking very specifically of my dad. That's who I learned this attitude from. He thought that people who were smarter had more value. And so he would go into, for example, workplaces and try to make himself at the top of the hierarchy without any understanding of the workplace dynamics or the functions. He just thought that because he was smarter, that it didn't matter that he didn't have experience and that it didn't matter that he didn't have training, that they should just put him in charge because. And he's obviously not been very successful in his career. So I I sort of laugh when I see people who have this misorientation because it truly is one that wastes human capacity, human ability, and it's all in service of the ego to feel superior at somebody else's expense. And that is intrinsically a stupid way to operate because to tear other people down to make yourself feel more important or to feel better or to feel superior, right? You're destroying what we use to build community, um, showing a fundamental lack of understanding of like the whole point of evolution for human beings. So if you are dealing with somebody like this, and they're usually also very narrow about how they define intellect. Usually it's very STEM oriented, it's very mathematic. Oh, I read these kind of books or I watch these kinds of shows. I'm proving that I'm like a quote unquote smart person, and it's very specific. And anybody who doesn't think these ways or watch these shows or is interested in the same hobbies or whatever it is, they're not smart. They're not as good as me. Um, it just is stupid. It's stupid. Anyway, I just wanted to see if I could articulate that because I know I've touched on it in other videos, but it's really worth talking about how if you have somebody who has a might makes right mentality, even if it's not with physicality, but it's with intellect, that's still somebody who thinks it's okay to control another person. That is a person who thinks that other people are below them on a hierarchy and they don't respect them. That person doesn't have an intrinsic level of respect for somebody as a human being, and so they are going to misuse any power they have over that person. I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.